Net neutrality. The term is interchangeable with open internet and simply means that internet service providers, or ISPs, should treat all traffic that moves along their wires, or pipes as they are sometimes described, equally. Net neutrality sounds like a good idea, so what's the big deal? There's lots of current concern because of an upcoming vote in which the FCC may or may not decide to classify ISPs as common carriers. Per the freedictionary.com, common carriers are legally bound to carry all passengers or freight as long as there is enough space, the fee is paid, and no reasonable grounds to refuse to do so exist. And in addition, a common carrier that unjustifiably refuses to carry a particular person or cargo may be sued for damages. However, currently ISPs are not common carriers. Instead, they are categorized as information services. Why are things getting so heated right now? It goes back almost a year to January 2014 with Verizon winning a court battle with the FCC in which the court system declared the FCC could not treat ISPs as common carriers because it had already classified them as information services. This decision triggered a domino effect. Shortly thereafter, Netflix agreed to pay Comcast huge amounts of money to stop Comcast from throttling Netflix movies. Apple began negotiating with Comcast, and both AT&T and Verizon requested permission from the FCC to allow new pricing schemes. In response, the FCC came up with a new rulemaking proposal on May 15th and vowed to ratify a new rule by the end of the year. In June, the FCC's website crashed due to an overload of comments on net neutrality after comedian John Oliver brought the issue of net neutrality up on his show. By the end of the comment period, the FCC had received almost 4 million comments, and a random sampling of those comments by the Sunlight Foundation indicates over 99% are in favor of net neutrality. To add to the pressure, President Obama released a statement on November 10th encouraging the FCC to reclassify ISPs as common carriers under Title II of the Telecommunications Act. As of the end of the year, time was ticking. But the FCC broke its promise and delayed the vote on net neutrality until 2015. Those in favor of net neutrality argue an open internet prevents an increasing divide between those who can afford to pay to play and those who cannot. An open internet treats all traffic equally, regardless of content. The current system also allows anyone with a new idea to try it out because there is relatively easy access. However, this could change should it start costing to experiment with new ideas on the web. Proponents also point out censoring web content is in effect censoring free speech. As David Carr puts it, to control traffic is to control information. Another argument is that currently most consumers have a limited number of choices when it comes to internet service providers, and in fact two of the largest, Time Warner and Comcast, are currently in the process of merging. And without regulation, there is a much stronger chance for price gouging to occur. Even the creator of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee, agrees it was created for everyone. And lastly, those in favor call attention to the fact that they do not want Congress to create new laws and new regulations, but only to better protect the free flow of information with existing laws under the current system. Those opposed to net neutrality point out other arguments. The opposition claims regulating net neutrality is unnecessary since our capitalistic market system guides competition fairly with the best innovations rising to the top. They assert that if there is little opportunity for profitability, which they say would happen with more regulation, then fewer companies would endeavor to enter the market, resulting in limited competition. However, as pointed out, proponents argue that there is already almost no competition. Those against also contend that regulation would only stifle the ability of ISPs to adjust to the rapidly changing technological world of the internet. And finally, opponents maintain that the internet is not a necessity, but only a luxury service. But when it comes right down to it, only one person's opinion on net neutrality matters, that of FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler. Just why is Wheeler so important? Well, it's because he's the deciding vote. The Federal Communications Commission is made up of 4 commissioners and 1 chair. The commissioners consist of 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats who have already stated where they stand, with the 2 Republicans opposing net neutrality and the 2 Democrats in favor of net neutrality. That leaves Wheeler to cast the deciding vote, and he seems to be listening to both sides, looking for some middle ground. Which also may explain why Gautam Nagesh recently reported on what he refers to as a hybrid approach that the FCC is now considering. Nagesh goes on to say, the plan now under consideration would separate broadband into 2 distinct services, a retail one in which consumers would pay broadband providers for internet access, and a back-end one in which broadband providers serve as the conduit for websites to distribute content. The FCC would then classify the back-end service as a common carrier, giving the agency the ability to police any deals between content companies and broadband providers. In other words, it currently appears that neither side is going to be pleased with the outcome. And of course, now that the vote has been pushed back even further, one has to wonder whether the hulking ISP companies will wear down the net neutrality supporters camping out in protest on the FCC's doorstep. And of course, we do not live in a vacuum. The FCC's decision could potentially alter the internet as we know it around the world. Many foreign ISPs have had a hard time trying to compete with the colossal American tech companies that dominate the ISP market. If these companies are allowed to discriminate in US markets, other countries would probably reciprocate by allowing their own companies to do the same. As Marvin Omari puts it, the result would be a global patchwork of fees and discriminatory rules. So, what will the internet look like after the 2015 vote? No one can say for certain how the FCC's decision will affect the internet, but I found this image created by Quink on Reddit to very simply, very vividly illustrate what the future may hold if ISPs are allowed to discriminate.